Welcome to the Third Eye Show, which brings you ancient wisdom as well as cutting-edge investigations into the mysteries of the universe. The Third Eye Show celebrates our diversity, like the unique beauty of each individual wave, and our oneness, like the magnificent ocean from which each wave emerges. We are all one in spirit as we live on this earth plane. The third eye is said to be able to see into the spiritual and psychic realms. At a time when our lives, our country, and our planet are undergoing intense transformations, we will explore topics that will fascinate, enlighten, and empower. Join us as we witness the thrilling ways spirit manifests in our daily lives and the varied paths we choose to create heaven here on our earth. The Third Eye Show is created and offered in love and light.
My friend Drew Cali and I were invited to come out to Ireland to speak at the 13th Annual World Ghost Convention, which is held in Cork at the old Cork Jail every year. And so, Drew, you flew out from England where you were studying and giving demonstrations of mediumship. And Mike and I flew out from Boston, and we met here. We've been having a lot of fun here.
Absolutely.
And having some high times. And we spoke at the Ghost Convention. So, which was, I just want to mention the organizers because they're so generous and such wonderful Cork boosters and such lovely people. Richard T. Cook and Catherine M. Courtney put on the Ghost Convention every year. They are very high energy and wonderful, lovely people. They love Cork and they love this convention. They have a lot of fun with it. And so thank you to both of you. You're lovely people.
Absolutely.
We really enjoyed participating. So do you want to talk about your impression of it and what it was like for you?
Yeah,
it was fun.
It was a lot of fun, and it was nothing what I thought it would be. And I didn't know. I mean, coming from America, there's a lot of things where they mention the word ghost, and there's all sorts of different things attached to it. What was wonderful about this is there was such a genuine enthusiasm and interest from not only Richard and Catherine, but from the people. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know. I had no idea what to expect. It was at the Cork County Jail.
The old Cork Jail.
Old Cork Jail. And absolutely an incredible place and a lot of fun. And the speakers, we all spoke with each other beforehand. And I think it went, I want to use the word swimmingly. Mm. It really did. It just flowed throughout the night. And there was about almost 300 people there. Mm-hmm. And everybody was very attentive and interested with questions that were, I thought, fantastic. I really did. And even the flow of speakers, everybody touched on something that had to do with the spiritual aspect of certain things or the history of it and how it can teach us. I thought it was wonderful.
Yeah, it really is a great event. They sell out every year, so they could handle many more people. If the space were larger, many more people could get in because I know that there's an interest. There's a really big interest in people who have integrity, who aren't trying to hype the whole ghost thing, who aren't trying to hype it or sell it or make it melodramatic or whatever, who are serious about it. And have real answers to their questions. There's a real interest in hearing people talk about it because there were a lot of great questions. People submitted their own stories, which were read throughout the evening by Kevin Powers, who was the MC, and a terrific MC, and he was really great.
Yeah, he was.
And then people asked questions at the end. We sort of lined up and did a panel discussion, and people submitted their questions. They were good questions. So I think that they weren't there for a thrill, they weren't there for a sensation, they were there to learn something and to share experiences and to ask questions and to, they were there for real reasons. It felt really good to me.
I think so too. I think that the questions spoke volumes.
Yeah.
Because they were intelligent questions and things like, does religion have anything to do with it, to is mediumship an ability or a gift? I really think, and when that to me is more telling than anything, and the general interest that's drawn to that that space and this convention, and with Richard and Catherine setting it up, it allowed for a real educational night, and for me too. On the other side of it, doing the Q&A was probably my favorite part, because the interaction and having people so engaged, I thought was really fascinating, and it really is telling that they weren't there for the wow. Mm-hmm. They weren't there for, ooh, it's spooky. They were there to really get the essence of what is beyond, what's beyond me, and I think that's really powerful and important.
Yeah, I think so too. I absolutely agree. Some of the questions that were asked were things like, you mentioned a couple of them. Someone asked about atheists. Can atheists successfully cross over? Some of the questions people came up to us with later on also were just wonderful. So people were coming there with questions in their minds and in their hearts when they walked through the door. I'm thinking about this. I'm wondering if my mom and dad can cross over successfully if they're atheists, or which of course they can, and I'm sure they will. To how about Ouija boards? Is it okay to play with Ouija boards? And the answer is no. I enjoyed it when Teresa Collins, one of the speakers, a medium, and one of the speakers at the convention, talked about ways to communicate with spirit. I thought that was really good. She offered a short meditation in which you could just sort of still your mind and communicate with spirit. So she was offering something to people who don't consider themselves mediums, who haven't studied mediumship, but who have loved ones they would like to communicate with. Don't we all have loved ones we'd like to communicate with? And she was offering an opportunity, a way to sort of start to open up to that possibility and open up to that modality, and I thought that was great.
And you knew everybody did it because you could hear them with their papers down.
Yeah.
And it got real quiet. I thought it was really nice, and you weren't connecting with someone else or someone else's loved ones. You were connecting with your own. And even Kevin had something good to say about it. He said, I connected with somebody. So I think that was really interesting. I thought Catherine Lowry had an excellent, she had excellent points on the different facets of mediumship.
Yes. From
the passive altered states like trance, to which is a deepening of the senses where you're going beyond yourself and allowing spirit to come very close, to the mental mediumship, which is where it's linking in with other deceased spirits, and actually getting a link to the physical mediumship, which I think is not talked about enough. And I think, with when she talked about ectoplasm, people think of Ghostbusters. I used to. So I think it's really special that, this educational forum allowed for a format like that to cover the different facets, with the ectoplasm being, it manifests a physical, basically anybody, you don't have to be a medium. If you're sitting in the room, you're going to notice the table move or some sort of manifestation. And I think that's a special type of mediumship that allows for a very special type of evidence. So I thought she was brilliant.
Absolutely. And then of course there was Dr. Margaret Humphreys, who gave us a context, who gave us she's a folklorist and she teaches at the local university. So she brought in a point of view that was not a medium's point of view. The rest of us were all mediums. She brought in a point of view that was a little bit different, a little more academic, but equally important, because it helped to provide the context. And she told some stories that she found compelling about spirit manifestations.
Well, I think that's one of the special things too, is that if you only have mediums discussing mediumship, it's hard it's hard for me to remember what it's like to not know. And I think for people to continuously seek and search and to be fascinated by the history of it, by documented stories that are truths to them, it resonates with them, and it keeps them searching, and I just think that's so imperative.
Yeah, I agree. And then of course you talked about your experience just sort of opening up to mediumship and what it was like for you, considering yourself just a regular guy, and I know you consider yourself just a regular guy, but you were always a medium. And you were always sensitive, and I think now, probably looking back at your life, you can look at moments and say, well, wait a second, that was a spiritual moment and that was mediumship, but you didn't really see it that way at the time. But in any event, you were talking about yourself as a quote-unquote regular guy opening up to mediumship, and you really have a very common touch with people. I mean, you're not pretentious at all, and people really respond to that.
Thank you.
It's true. You have this unpretentious honesty that people really do respond to. So I think it's great for people to listen to you talk, because what you're saying essentially is, I'm like you, I am you.
Yes,
And
I'm no better, I'm no worse, I don't have a bat phone to God.
I'm not a swami, you know, I'm not a guru. I'm a person who's having these experiences and is learning to work with this energy and work with this. And I think that really touches people. People really do respond to that.
Thank you very much. It was beautiful being able to
You
do
did a
that.
great job. Everybody was laughing. You just loosened everybody up.
Good.
Yeah.
Especially at the Ghost convention. But Lucia, you also spoke, and you were last to speak, which I thought was perfect. It's like the icing on the cake. I mean, you shared, that you were brought up with this gift, and understanding it has been a lifetime journey, which I really, really respect, because I think people rush so much to try to understand it and do it and all that. And I think you bring such a level of integrity to mediumship. When you were speaking about the meatballs, how a spirit came through, you were sharing your stories of your experiences with sitters, and how a mother came through and didn't like the way that this person was making meatballs, and she was like, oh my God, and I'll let you finish the story, but it was just brilliant, I thought, because that touched everybody, and I had the chills just talking about it. It really capped the night off just beautifully. And also, as you were stepping away, you have this wonderful way of sharing where I felt like you were just talking to me. And I think everybody in the audience felt that. And they were really drawn in, they were laughing, they were, it gets them thinking, it gets them excited, and you're sharing a real story that you experienced. And I think my favorite out of all of it was at the end, you took a moment, and it was totally inspired, and you stepped forward and said, regardless of how you think or see or whatever, it's about feeling it, and it's coming from your heart. And I think, the emotion in the room at that point had climaxed, and and I knew that was the perfect way to close the night. It was great.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Well, it really was a lot of fun, and I look forward to doing it again sometime.
Me too.
Yeah.
Good night, everybody, and I just come from the opening of the Jazz Festival, and I said if anything could be more different coming from the Jazz Festival to the opening of the Ghost Convention. And earlier on this summer, when I was just elected Lord Mayor, I met Richard Cook and Catherine. And Richard is a great man in the city. If there's anything good happening within the city, Richard was somewhere in the middle of it. But he said, you have to come and open our Ghost Convention in November or October. And I said, geez, that's miles and miles away. And I said, fine. But when I was on my way up tonight, and I was coming with Jordan and Martin, my husband, and a friend of mine, Martin Finnan, I said, I have no idea what I'm going to. No idea. But I said, I'm really going to sit back, enjoy, and be hopefully informed before the night is out. And to see when I was coming in that it's a full house, that there are no tickets available, and Catherine said to me that has been since the very start, like it's fully booked out. So I hope that all of you get what you want out of tonight. So congratulations, and this is the Catherine and Richard have been involved from the very start as well on the 13th World Ghost Convention, and I know that Kevin is expecting something really different because it's the 13th, so hopefully we all won't be disappointed. So thank you, and well done to everybody.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for coming here this evening to the 13th World Ghost Convention. So, without further ado, I want to thank again the Lord Mayor, our Cork Councillor Catherine Clancy, for officially opening the 13th World Ghost Convention. And now I will hand you over to our very wonderful host for the evening, Kevin Power, who will guide us through the evening's proceedings as only Kevin can. Thank you very much indeed.
We come to our first speaker this evening, Dr. Margaret Humphreys, and she's going to be looking at the universal perspective about death and different types of belief in different cultures. And I must say, it's going to be rather interesting looking at it from a slightly different angle than just the norm. Dr. Margaret Humphreys.
Perhaps we could liken sightings of ghosts to stories about the fairies, because particularly here in Ireland we had a strong belief in the wee people, and people that might have had unusual experiences were sort of ashamed to say, because you'd be regarded as a little bit funny and all that sort of thing. But the same would really count for ghost stories. And of course, our position here in Ireland is unique insofar as for many, many years we were untainted by modernity on account of our unique geographical position, perched out on the verge of the world, so to speak. They say, what do they say, the nearest parish to Boston. So therefore, we weren't tainted. And that's why we have so many lovely pishogues and stories about ghosts, stories about fairies, and there's a great artistic kind of streak going through the people of Ireland as well. And I think particularly at this time of the year, it's wonderful that Catherine and Richard go to the, let's say, the trouble of organising this festival in this particular setting, because Halloween is a time, it's a dark time of the year, a very gloomy time, and a lot of scholars actually associate with death. They say death is let's say it's a dark hole in a person's lifestyle, or lifetime, rather, in their life circle, and Halloween is a dark hole as well. We're going into the old time, it's a dark or dreary time of the year. And there was a belief in olden times, and of course we can kind of actually hinge onto it here, that the barriers would be down between the other world and the human world at this time of the year. And another place we can talk about in relation to a sense of place would be the grave in the graveyard. We've all lost somebody. I'm quite sure everybody here in the audience has had a bereavement at some stage in their lives. And we must accept that there is a feeling of comfort. I'm afraid I'm very anti-cremation. I think personally, in my own case, that there's a great feeling of comfort in visiting a graveyard. We feel nearer to our beloved. We almost feel that they're on our shoulders helping us to try and come to terms with our loss. And if they were interested in flowers and plants and nice gardens, I think it's such a lovely thing to do, to keep them, to break down the barriers between their world and ours. And I know I've always come away from those places feeling somewhat more peaceful, and I'm sure you do as well, because we are closer to them then. And then I'm going to talk briefly about our beloved pets, the dogs. Most of the Irish are great dog lovers, and dogs, a lot of people, a lot of humans, have failed to develop our additional sensory powers, but dogs seem to have it. And they have manifested in so many ways. They can become extremely attached to their master if their master dies, and if the remains are put in a grave and all of that. There are various stories about the dog sitting on the grave and waiting, and the neighbours will have to feel he will not leave. They know that his spirit is there nearby. And of course, we know as well that dogs can sense an oncoming death. And lots of people maintain, those of particular families, the Corkers and the O's and that the banshee can actually, the howl of the banshee, of course, ban is a lady and she is a member of the fairy tribe, but that the howl of the banshee is very like the howl of a dog, a very lonesome cry. So tonight when I finish speaking, you'll be benefited by the stories that are going to be told to you from a lot of interesting contributors, and they'll be outlining their own personal experiences. And we're on were accessible to all of you and give you a kind of a feeling of comfort when you go away from here. And personally, there is a particular program on the television that I've looked at once or twice, Dave Byrne, The Meaning of Life. And it was all right there about a week ago, but I've turned it off on several occasions because he's interviewing people who have no belief in the afterlife. And I actually feel very sorry for those people because they have nothing to hope for if we don't have a sense of belief. So I would say that death is not the end of our existence. It's just a part of the journey, the end of our human experience. We are going to move into another dimension and a joyous, peaceful place, a spiritual world, where we'll be able to meet our friends and lovers and relatives. And when our time comes to move on, we will be privileged because we will be able to look after those who are still alive. Thank you.
I know I say it every year, but having just heard what Margaret Humphreys said there, it just seems that Shakespeare was so right. There are more things in heaven and earth for what's the other than dreamt of in your philosophy. And I think the pithier way that we might say it in Cork would be, you don't know the heaven. I think it's very true, really, honestly. The first eyewitness account of the evening was brought to Richard by Patricia Manning from Dublin in 2009. And this is what she said. It's been quite a number of years since I visited the ancient Ballinor Castle, County Laois, a visit I never forget to my dying day. There were four of us, myself and my husband and our friends who were also married. We decided to go for a weekend to the castle following the recommendations of our friends who had stayed there a year previously, and I can only describe it as a haunted weekend. We drove into the old grounds of the old castle. There were trees overgrown along with shrubs. Count Dracula's stagecoach would not have been out of place there. Everywhere we looked had an ancient look about it. It was that kind of place. We were greeted when we arrived by the castle hostess, Grania, an elegant petite lady who looked like she had stepped out of a Victorian black and white postcard. She brought us first into the old mansion house that had an old aura of time about it. After we finished checking in, Grania brought us to where we were going to stay for the weekend, the castle. It looked ancient and it smelled ancient. Everything about it was ancient, and every step we took was a history lesson by Grania about the castle and the area. She even brought us up to the battlements, and the scenery was breathtaking. On that Friday night, we all retired early at 11:30 p.m. We retired after our trip to Dublin. Eddie, my husband, and myself wondered how people lived in the winters long ago at the castle. It wasn't long before we drifted off to sleep, but a loud scream coming from our friend's room woke us up. We got out of bed and rushed to see what was happening, and saw our friend in a state of shock being comforted by her husband. She told us that she had seen a woman with a pale face looking down at her, who moved backwards away from her and disappeared into the darkness of the room. My husband went to get Grania. She wasn't surprised. She told us that the castle has many visitors from the other side. The following morning, on my way to the mansion house for breakfast, when I was going down the stony steps right down to where the toilets are, I saw a man dressed in all I can describe as a uniform, and he walked past me as if I wasn't there. So there you go. As I said, we don't know the harms. Our second speaker this evening is Drew Cali, psychic medium and healer, and he's speaking about the experience of spirits and spiritual awakening and how he discovered that he himself was a medium. Drew Cali.
I just like sharing my experience because if you knew me 5 years ago, there's no way I can stand up here. There's no way I believe in any of this. It didn't matter what was on TV or what, you know, someone else experienced. I had to experience it. And sure enough, I did. I grew up in New Jersey. My mom's Irish, my dad's Italian, so I was brought up Catholic, for the most part. And, you know, when we would go to psychics or mediums or hear about ghosts and whatnot, it would be on the boardwalk at, like, you know, by the beach, and kind of like a fun thing, entertaining thing. But I was always drawn to it. You know, I didn't know exactly why. And I'm 37 now. In my early 30s, I called, my sister was like, listen, Drew, you have to call this psychic. Like, what for? She's like, for your business. Like, okay. So I called her, and she told me all this stuff, like things like, I'm going to be doing yoga. I was like, no way. And sure enough, like a few months later, I was doing yoga. And so I called her back about 6 months later. It was in December. And I told her, like, you know, everything you said was right. She started talking to me, and she was like, listen, your guides are telling me this. I'm like, who? What are you talking about? And she was like, no, your guides are trying to communicate. Well, what's their names? You know, I'm waiting for like Harry, John, and Joe. And she was like, listen, you're supposed to meditate tonight, and you'll meet them. And I'm like, what? But I couldn't help it. I was like, okay. So like 1 o'clock in the morning, December 17th, 17th at 1 o'clock in the morning, I sat down with a candle. I did everything wrong. I looked up in Google's how to meditate, how to protect yourself, and I was doing all this stuff. And I'm not knocking it. I just was so ignorant. I had no concept, no clue at all. So, but I was determined to either meet my guides or put it to rest. So I sat down, I lit up a candle, and I had my little dog next to me. I was sitting on a bar stool, go figure. But it was in my house. It was just that it was a little bit high. My feet went on the ground, and they say your feet were supposed to be on the ground. So like I said, I was doing everything wrong. And I was a little worried about falling out of the chair. And I went into this meditation, where I went in, I just sat quietly, basically. Said a prayer, sat quietly. And about probably 20, 25 minutes into it, there was this garden. And my mom had passed. And I see her dancing around this tree. And again, this is in my mind. This isn't my house yet. So she's dancing around this tree, and there was a gentleman sitting at this table. And I couldn't make out his face. It was like almost like he morphed. You know? And I was so far beyond myself. I was beyond self, beyond mind, beyond thought. And that's the only way I can explain it. I was in this like flow of consciousness. And then all of a sudden there was this river on the right, and this gentleman gets up and walks out and walks up, right up to me. I don't want to say walked into me, because that would have freaked me out. But walked right up to me, and it looked like, I don't want to say it wasn't me, but it looked like a version of me like 1,000 years ago. So it was somebody like a flatter nose, and he was wearing like a cloth around his waist, and he just looked peaceful, but like stoic. And I remember I opened my eyes and I was like, what? And I almost fell out of the chair. And I looked at my dog and I'm like, all right, time for bed. You know? And basically, when I looked up, I had windows like that on my sliding doors, but they're a little bit bigger. Each square is about like that. And I look up, and there's this face in the window, and I was like, there's just no way I'm seeing it. So for like 2 hours, I was just like, so I literally was like, you know, if I was scared if I moved, it was going to go away. So I'm going like this. And I ended up grabbing a pencil, and I drew it. And as I'm drawing the face, a woman's face came to the right of it, looking this way. So I'm like, all right, this is getting creepy. So I opened up the door, and I'm looking for legs, basically. And when I would open up the door, you know, and then I'm looking for reflections. Is there a light back there? Is there something? Because it just was, and it wasn't a bad energy, it was just unknown. So I was immediately kind of like, you know, really afraid. So I ended up texting the psychic back. She gave me her cell phone number. I was like, let me know how the meditation goes. So I texted her, listen, there's people in my windows. You know, so anyway, when I would walk to the left, the head would just be like, and it wasn't like a freaky, scary, spooky thing, but it was like kind of invasive, you know, I mean, but it wasn't like, I thought they were going to come get me, because I just can't explain it. It was like, you know, I call it my awakening, or re-awakening, I should say. And there was just this point where I finally was like, after about 3 hours of staring at it, trying to talk to it, you know, there was no words, but there were, and as I would talk to it, it almost became more and more vivid. And there would be other faces that I would start to notice, and I was like, this can't be happening. I really thought I was losing my mind. I really did, because before this, if you told me that, I'd get out of here. That's just the way I would have thought about it. Or even if I did believe it, which I did, it wouldn't be something I'd want to talk about and admit. So that was December 17th, and I didn't sleep for like 3 days. And in the morning, I remember, it probably was about 5 or 6 in the morning where I tried to sleep and the laying like that. I just can't get out. I went down to check it out, and the sun was coming up. So I don't know if it had to do with the light or whatever, so I couldn't see anything. But to my left, I kept seeing I don't want to say shadows, but just I felt a presence. I felt a presence. For the first time in my life, I was really aware. Not the kind of awareness you necessarily want. So a couple of days go by. And every time I come home, I check it, all this stuff. And basically, every time I touched water after that third day, I went back and I took pictures of this. I had a guy, the face literally coming through the window, kind of like this. And it's not a clear, like human face, but it's it looks like a mist. I don't know how to explain it. So I got really intrigued. But anyway, I put my hands under the sink one day, and I was just washing my hands and going to work. It was like the third day, or the fourth day. And I hear, "This is Jonathan, you gotta call Jason, Jonathan H." What? And so I'm like, I'm gonna take a shower. So I went up and took a shower, and I'm going to work. I'm talking to my house at this point. I'm going to work, and I get in the shower, and I hear all these voices coming really close, really loud. They're trying to get my attention, basically. "You're not going to work today, you're not going to work today." And I was losing my balls. So I go, all right. I banged my head on the shower. There's a big gash, so I couldn't go to work today. So I ended up calling back the psychic, and she was like, "Drew, just meditate and ask them how they can help you, or if you can help them, or what they were there for, etc." So I started meditating. As soon as I go into the meditation, I get this guy Jonathan coming back. So in short, he ends up telling me that whenever I heard the name Jason, it was somebody, the yoga guy. The guy that was like a yoga teacher. And I wasn't friends with him. I'm like, I'm going to call this guy and tell him that the guy's talking to me and I'm touch water. This is not going to happen. So it wouldn't stop. So basically, I call him up and I'm like, "Jay, listen, I had a dream." I couldn't tell him that something was talking to me. So, and I tell him about this person. As I'm talking to him, I feel like a poke in my head, or in my kidney. And I knew that all of a sudden getting this guy had cancer, and that he died, he smoked, his skin was discolored again, he was 67, died the day after Christmas, it was 6 years ago. And he said, "True, what the hell?" I'm like, "What? I don't know." So he ends up calling his sister, it was her husband's father, so it was his brother-in-law's father. So he said, "Would you mind coming by to look at some pictures to see if this is real?" There's no way I could have known this. And everything in my body was saying, "No." And I went, "Okay." So the power of spirit to me is that kind of stuff. It's this influence. And, there were numerous instances. Even when I did go there, basically they put out all these pictures, and I was nervous, but I just felt so compelled to go. You ever have that? You're just so compelled to go do something, and there's a synchronicity that you can't explain. And this was just beyond. I go in there, and I start to let I get a sister's name, and I get this and that, and all this stuff. And they're all sitting there like this. When I picked up the 3 pictures, they had like 50 pictures out. None of them were the age that I originally said I'd seen them. And they all crossed their arms and sat back, and I thought I got it wrong. Honestly, I was relieved. I was like, "Thank God." I'm like, "No, you got it right." I'm like, "What?" I really couldn't believe it. So, because of who I am and where I come from and how I was brought up, this was not normal. This was something that I'd briefly seen on a TV show or what have you. So I was just like, I can't be a medium. This is impossible. I'm just not made for it. And apparently I'm wrong. But basically, over the next couple of weeks, stuff kept happening. And I was having, we have to remember how powerful we are too, because something won't exist unless they can draw. I feel that they are our best teachers. And I had that experiences where I was really afraid of something I would see. And what I mean by that is that I feel like spiritual energy can be very reactive. Yes, it can be proactive, but it can be very reactive. Because if I was really, really afraid of something, it would look scarier and scarier. But then when I would calm down and go, okay, what's going on here? What are you trying to teach me? All of a sudden, it would calm down. All right? And I think, nowadays I find that people want that wow factor. I would. But I feel like they are our best teachers, because the truth is, what it did was it started making me look inward and beyond. And I feel like the spiritual can also be intertwined with the consciousness, right? The conscious levels. It's like a river that surrounds the ocean, that surrounds the earth that we can't see. but it continues to flow. It's connected to an ocean beyond that we can't see, with all different levels, all different forms of life, whatever you want to call it. But what I do know is that there is a life after life. And what it made me realize is that because there is a life after life, and I do mediumship, I don't do it full time for a living, but I do help as many people as I can. And through every message that I get for somebody, it's also for me. So the intelligence of it is so incredible that it's beyond anything we can understand. I mean, you know, when I do a demonstration, if I have people that come in like this, we'll have 3 people that will sit next to each other that don't know each other, and they'll have a very similar experience with the death that they experience of a loved one. You know, something that you can't plan in. I feel like, you know, yes, we have free will, we can do what we, you know, want to do, but I feel like we're supposed to give reverence to it. Now, if someone's having a really, really bad experience, I get it. But also, I think if we stay smart and we respect it and the power of it, and also the power of us and our belief, because if you believe something, I really think you can own it. You know, I've learned a lot in the last couple of years about spirituality and different versions of it and what people believe, and it can really, really make or break the way something works for you. I mean, if you ever go to something like, even if I was sitting with people like, oh, I'm going to pass out, I'm going to pass out, I'm going to pass out. I might get up here and pass out because our thoughts are that powerful. And I feel like whenever there is some sort of experience, you have to ask why. And not necessarily at first, why me maybe, I don't know. But the big thing for me is to keep my ego out of it, because they teach me nothing but humility. I mean, I was sitting in my kitchen, and I saw a spoon go flat. And I was like, oh, this did not just happen. So for months, I'm grabbing the spoon trying to make it bend and going. And some of it would actually go like this. I had people witness this and play guitar, and then they would lift up the wire. You know, and it wasn't because they were trying to spook me, because they wanted to hear the guitar. You know, so to me, they're a living form of energy that is here to help us. And it may have to be an experience that we don't necessarily like or may freak us out of it, but I do feel ultimately that they're here to help us. And if that is only as simple as you witnessing something scary that makes you look beyond this life, then that's the lesson. And that's really what I feel about it. I think, you know, especially in America, there's a lot of, I just think that it's easy to lose the integrity and the honor in the spiritual by, you know, becoming so fascinated with, because if you think about it, I mean, how much do we really know? You know, the more I learn, the more I realize I just don't know. And it just continues like that. So my spiritual path, I mean, it's changed my life. You know, because I'm so fascinated with this type of stuff. I mean, I've never been to Ireland before. I've been here for a few days, thanks to a couple of friends of mine and to Richard and Catherine. You know, it's just incredible to be up here. I'm really, to just share that story, and there's so much more to it. I can stand up here for an hour. I mean, I have pictures, I have orbs, I have all sorts of stuff, but I don't post a background story that tries to creep people out. I try to really learn what it is. And what am I feeling about that? Because my initial reaction would be like, oh my God. You know? So I think it's important that we kind of ask why, and what would be the purpose of this, and how can this benefit us? Because I do feel that we are protected. I do feel that we are looked after, and I do feel that spirit, in the plural sense of spirit, the spiritual, has a lot to do with this. I feel like it's God's emissaries. That's how I feel about it. And if they have to be presented to us in a way that can be scary or this or that, then so be it. I mean, as long as it gets you focusing on something beyond this life and, you know, I live from here to here and here, screw it. I mean, you know, there's so much incredible stuff out there. And I've been so inspired by spirit, and they're my teachers. And I hope they will continue to be so. So thank you all very much for listening.
Catherine, Lowry, spiritual healing medium and registered nurse through the state.
I haven't had the experiences that Drew has had. When I was young, I kind of felt somebody around. My first visual experience I was about 12 years old, and I was lying in bed, and it was about twilight, and whatever, I felt something over in the corner. And whatever look I gave, I saw a fairy and a spinning wheel. So I said, Mammy, there's a fairy in the room. So she came down and she said, you're grand, you'll be fine, you were dreaming. But I wasn't. And I thought out loud when later on I read about people like normal people, businessmen, who had actually seen fairies when they were in their most relaxed state. And that's usually when we do see spirit, when we're, just relaxed, just before we wake up, or just after we wake up, or just before we go to sleep, because we're kind of dead to the world, the physical body, and the mental and emotional bodies are all at rest. So it's easier to communicate with spirit at that time. Later on, I really didn't see spirits around, but I kind of was in a world of my own. One night I woke up crying again. I saw these faces coming towards me, including my own, just like the big blue faces, one after the other. And I started crying, and when I told them what happened, my brother said, "No wonder you cried when you saw your own face coming towards you." So, siblings, So later on, it's only looking back that I realized that spirits were influencing my life through synchronicity. I became a nurse. While I was a student nurse there, the old buildings up there in St. Finbar's, there was one night a gentleman died. So the routine back then was, one of us would say the rosary with the person who died, and the nurse in charge would call the doctor. So I was saying the rosary up in St. Bridget's ward. I started hearing this crying, which was the banshee. I thought it might be the children, but the children's ward was quite away. So I said, Jesus, Mary, Joseph, which wasn't praying I was glad to get out of that room. And later on, I moved to the States, and it was only then I really felt the presence of spirits and angels. I never wanted to work in an oncology ward, and I said very specifically I wouldn't, until one night, it seems to be all nights with me, I just realised how weird it is. So I was asked to work in the oncology ward, and I could feel the spirit around the people there. And they were so happy. I couldn't understand how you could be so happy when you had cancer and you were dying. And later on, I come home on holidays, and once a group of us went down to Mr. Drake down in Youghal. He was known for reading the tea leaves. And as I walked in the door, he goes, "With your right hand you will heal." And I said, "Who's your man? What's he talking about?" So those were my experiences, which were very little when I was younger. So I have discovered a lot more since. And the big question everybody asks, is there life after death? And when somebody says, "No, I don't believe in all that," I just simply ask them what research they have done. First of all, of course, if you die, you know for sure, but then you have to come back and tell somebody. People have come back and told them they were not believed. The next is a near-death experience. And I've met a few people when I worked with cancer patients who had near-death experience, but there's been lots of documented evidence. One of them is Dr. Melvin Morse. He's an American pediatrician. He's documented lots of evidence of children who have had a near-death experience or who have seen spirits and angels around their bed. Then there's also Dr. Kubler-Ross. She's a psychiatrist from Switzerland, and she has documented a lot of near-death experiences over her long career. And more recently, there's a gentleman, Dr. Evan Alexander. He's just published a book recently. He's a neurologist in the States again, and he developed bacterial meningitis. Now, if bacterial meningitis is not treated immediately, what happens is a bit gruesome. The bacteria start eating away at the brain, so he cannot survive it. He went into a coma for 7 days, and during that time he had the experience like everybody goes through the tunnel, sees the light, surrounded by loving beings. They meet their loved ones, And they don't care, they really want to stay, but the boy says, it's not your time, let's go back. So he, because of surviving bacterial meningitis, people are paying more attention now. And some people had near-death experience that I've heard of who ended up in the morgue. And they wake up in the middle of the night again. They say, hello, is there anybody out there? And the poor old fellow looking after the morgue, probably having his cup of Barry's tea, has an RDE, like a real death experience, kind of shock. So, and remember the two Ronnies, one of them says, you know you're not doing well, the doctor's lying, but you've got a tag in your toe with your name in it. So the only way to get evidence of survival is by going to a medium, spiritual medium, and there are lots of us in the room tonight, not just the speakers. And the thing about spiritual mediums is the best mediums aren't necessarily the ones who've spoken in public or been on television or written books. There are brilliant mediums out there who just do it quietly. So right now I'm just going to do a small meditation here. So if you can just relax the body. And the way I do it, say, imagine your legs buds. And just sit back and relax. And imagine you're somebody just split open the bag and the buds are falling all over the place. And already some of you, the emotional body is relaxed now because the emotional body's natural way is happiness. So when you smile and it relaxes the body more. The mental body, you can't tell the mental body to be quiet. It's like a child. You gotta do the shopping, you do this, you gotta do that. So the thing to do is focus on the breath. The breath is our connection with spirit, because when it's gone, we're no longer alive, we're back in spirit world. So focus on the breath, and as you breathe in, imagine just a great white light going through all your body. And then breathe into the heart area. Imagine that white light in the heart area. Going to your head, and down your arms and down your legs. And breathe in and out of the heart center. And as you're in that center, imagine yourself in a room, indoor or outdoor, just sitting there, relaxed. And say to yourself, peace. Breathe in, peace. This is the place you go. This is the deep cellular level where everything happens. Anything you ask for, you dream of, when you go into that peace place, you're going to get it. So this is where your best friend is, the Great Spirit that connects with your own spirit. And this is the place you can go to any time of the day. Morning and night is the best time because you're already relaxed. And go in there and tell Great Spirit all your woes and troubles and your happinesses. And you can also ask whatever you ask for, you will get. Whether it's health, anything to do with your career, relationships, but you must have faith, because there's no time in the spirit. So when you ask for something, just believe it has already happened. Because once it's happening in the spirit world, it can't but manifest on the physical plane. So right now, while you're in there, just ask for just one thing. Doesn't matter what it is, nothing is too small. And then say thank you. And act like it's already yours. Don't focus on the question anymore, focus on the answer. Now just bring yourself back into the room. Touch the chair, get back into the physical. Okay. So that's just about it. Recently I've written a book, it's called Don't Rush to Heaven. I haven't talked about all this. But it's about people who have cured their incurable diseases by changing their diet and lifestyle, and it also includes the spiritual effect on the body and doing just what we've done. Dr. Candice Perth, she's an American psychoneuroimmunologist, talks about the effect of the mind, or the emotions on the mind. Whatever emotion you're feeling, whether it's positive or negative, happy, sad, healthy or unhealthy, it brings a message to the brain, and the brain gives a message to the immune system, and the immune system acts accordingly. So whatever you do think will happen within your body or within your environment is what you're going to get. Now, anybody who has wished for the lotto, don't go spending money tonight because it will take a while to manifest. So, thank you very much.
Now, our first speaker this evening is Teresa Collins, psychic medium, Reiki master and author, with a rather intriguing topic. How dead are the dead?
How dead are the dead? So, as soon as you say the word dead, what mental images come to mind? Well, that's it, isn't it? They're dead, gone, kaput. It's all over. Nothing. Just 6 feet under, they're buried, or a pile of ashes if they've been cremated. That's what we all face sometimes, especially if the angel of death knocks on our door when we're young. However, as we grow older, we hear strange stories, similar to what we heard tonight, about dying people seeing their predeceased loved ones. We hear deceased loved ones knocking on the windows to warn somebody of an oncoming death. We have mediums that channel information accurately, and yet we question, is there life after death? We hear people, very, very clever people saying, I am a scientist, I will not be fooled by superstition. Is it true that two worlds exist, the living world and that of the dead, and never the twain shall meet? However, they seem to meet occasionally. If they meet occasionally then, what allows this to happen? And why does it not happen all the time? The answer lies in suppression and prejudice, exactly what spiritualists have been accused of for hundreds of years by scientific people. It was assumed that if it could not be scientifically explained, then it was not real. However, 500 years ago, scientists considered the Earth to be flat. They told us that the sun revolved around the Earth. Copernicus, who said that the Earth revolved around the sun, was certainly not thanked for his efforts. They did not understand the power of germs, so millions of people were burned as witches for bringing the Black Plague to Europe when the infection was spread by rats. This tells us that scientists and science are evolving. What cannot be explained scientifically today and is considered incredible will be perfectly normal in the future. So if we can do something and it happens, then it's bloody well real. Okay, so now we're going to see what kind of mediums we have here tonight. So, normally, Spirit stays back from you because it respects your space. So what I'd like you now to do, please, is to close your eyes. And I'd like you now to call on a relative or a loved one who is in spirit and ask them to stand in close to you, closer than they've ever been before. Now at this stage, you should be feeling a tingling on your back, either on the right or the left-hand side of your back. If it's on the right-hand side, it's a gentleman that's with you. If it's on the left-hand side, it's a lady that's with you. Now in your mind's eye, see what's the first relative who's in spirit, what image comes into your mind, the very first one, and that's the spirit that's with you. In your mind's eye, ask the spirit its name.
Now, notice if there's any smell associated with that person. Perhaps if they smoked a cigar, you might smell a cigar. If they wore a particular perfume, you might smell a particular perfume. And just notice what smell there is. Now check your taste buds and notice if there's any interesting taste in your mouth that wasn't there a couple of minutes ago. Now, for the Sunday Inquirer question, ask that person what they're doing now in spirit. What are they up to these days? Now, if the Spirit came to you tonight, it's because it has a message for you. So please ask the Spirit what message it has for you tonight. See if it's brought you a gift, perhaps a bunch of flowers or a piece of jewellery. Now thank the Spirit and ask the Spirit to step back from you. And notice that you feel differently now once the Spirit steps back. And whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes. Now we did that rather quickly, but I'd like just to show a hand to the people who felt like they contacted the Spirit. Good, so that's about 25% of the audience. So for the rest of you, as I said, I did it rather quickly there. So just try it more slowly in your own time. A bit like Drew did with these spirit guides. Now, how many of you think there's spirits in the jail here? Any of you spirits around the jail? So I had the honour of being here last year, and I noticed quite a few spirits. And this year there seems to be less spirits than last year. So there seems to be a lot of healing going on here from the people coming in and out, and the energy is rising. And so when I was here last year, and I think this lady is still here, there was a lady in this first cell here. And when I was psychically tuning into her last night, I asked why she was there. And she was put in there for stealing bread in the 1800s. And she also told me she had been a prostitute out of necessity. And she told me that she had suffered great emotional, mental and physical trauma as a result of being in prison here. She was subsequently deported to Australia, like many of the ladies would have been, who were kept in captivity here. But she told me that she died en route as a result of typhoid, and her body was thrown overboard. Because she did not want her body in the ocean, she returns to the last place where she lived before on planet Earth. She told me her name was Maura Regan and that she came from Cali. So during the remainder of the evening, you can test your mediumship skills there. There's a few more spirits around up here, and see if you can tune into them also. So in summary, I hope I've clarified some issues for you tonight around death, mediumship and spiritual growth. Thank you all for coming here tonight and for supporting the wonderful Rose Convention, and happy Halloween.
Now, the fifth speaker is Lucia Reid, and her topic is the lighter side of the other side.
First of all, I would like to thank Richard Cook and Catherine Courtney for organizing this evening. I've been enjoying it very much, and I hope you do. And I also thank you for including me this evening. I was born to a medium. My mother was a practicing medium, and her friends were mediums, psychics, practitioners of one sort or another. So I was raised in an environment that nurtured my natural abilities. I really was very fortunate, because my first spiritual encounter that I can remember happened when I was 2 years old. So, I've been having spirit encounters forever, and I was fortunate because I was supported, things were explained to me, and I understood what was happening as I was growing up. So I was able to develop into a medium to help other people. They don't understand what's happening. There's a lot of fear out there around this subject. The focus of my work really is to demystify these experiences, so I've been in perfect accord with the intention of this evening. So, The work that I do as a medium involves linking with spirit and bringing messages through to people who are still here in the flesh, and bringing a moment together, helping people have a moment where they can touch that loved one, where they hear from that loved one. It is sacred work. It's very, I believe it's important work, but sacred work. I take it very seriously. However, there can be humor in these moments. It's not all serious. It's not always serious by any means, because not all of us are serious. We are all spirit. Everyone in this room is a spirit. So when you cross over into the spirit world, you're not going to lose yourself. You're not going to lose your personality or lose your identity. You retain that. And when you come through to someone you love, your sister, your son, whoever it may be, it's important that you come through with that personality. There's a reason. Even though our loved ones on the other side are evolving, they are learning, they are working, as we said earlier. They're not just playing harps and sitting on clouds. They're doing things, they're learning. Nevertheless, they come through to us with a personality that we knew, so that we really understand, that's my dad. I can bring through all the evidence in the world. He can give me all the facts and figures, the numbers, and and intellectually you can say, yeah, that's my dad. But if he brings to a moment that you remember, maybe something that you laughed together over, or something that happened together, that's when you know, you feel it, you know, that's my dad. So they come through with their personalities intact, so that we can have that experience and really understand that we are in communication, in fact, and truly, with that loved one. And some people are funny. And over the years that I have been doing this work, I work as a medium, as I said, in cities and galleries, and I also occasionally work, I consider the soul rescue, to help when there's haunting, when there's trouble in a home or a building. And there are two different things. There are spirits and there are ghosts. So I just want to draw a distinction. Spirits are people who have crossed successfully without a problem. They've crossed over to the higher side. They're vibrating at a higher energy, higher frequency. Ghosts, for one reason or another, as was also said this evening, because of trauma, because of guilt, because of attachment, because of confusion, sometimes remain close to the earth plane for a while. They're the ones who make things fly around. They're the ones that we perceive as ghosts, and sometimes they do need help. I don't believe that every ghost needs to be banished somewhere and has to be sent off someplace. That's completely inappropriate. What I do is ask for guidance when I'm asked to come into a place. I do a reading and ask for guidance and see if it's appropriate. But even they have a sense of humor. Can have a sense of humor. Even people who are troubled and are attached for one reason or another to this earth plane. So here's the lighter side of the other side. I gave a reading not too long ago to a woman whose father was immediately there. As a matter of fact, he was there before we sat down together. He couldn't wait to come through to her. Now, he could have shown himself. He had a whole life going with her. He could have shown himself in any way that he chose. In his suit going off to work, at that picnic. But he chose a moment that was humorous because it really connected her to him. She got it. She got his personality. She knew that's him. And this is what he showed me. He showed me himself mowing the lawn on a Saturday morning. He was mowing the lawn. And I'm sure he could have shown me himself when he was dressed in a more flattering way. But what he chose to show me was this sort of skinny guy with a bald head and thick black glasses with baggy mattress plaid shorts on with skinny legs, black socks and sandals, pushing the lawnmower on a Saturday morning, and while music was coming out of the house, the piano was in. And that was talked about tonight too, the different ways that medium will pick up on spirit, the different ways that the spirit will communicate. And in that moment, that encapsulated for the woman I was reading for, the sitter, her father. First, yes, her mother played the piano, so that's why we could hear the piano. His mom did play the piano. But he showed himself in a sort of self-deprecating way that was so characteristic of him that there was no question that was him. So he could have given us all the facts and figures in the world, but that moment was him. That was him. So sometimes they come through in that way, and there's a reason for it. Sometimes it's not so high-minded. They're just kind of nosy, or they're looking over our shoulders. There was a woman I read for not too long ago, and I've long since learned to just say it. Whatever it is, just say it. Even if it sounds crazy, just say it. It's going to mean something to her, even if it doesn't mean anything to me. So she sits down across from me, and immediately I'm hearing meatballs. And I could see, it felt like Mom was not liking the meatballs. She didn't like the way they're being made, or she didn't like what was happening in the kitchen, or there was something she didn't like about the meatballs. So I said, she's talking about meatballs. I don't know what this means. But she doesn't like the meatballs. And the woman said, I can't believe you just said meatballs, because we're having a party, this weekend, whatever. And I just talked to my husband an hour ago about being too busy to make meatballs, and I'm going to go to the supermarket and buy frozen kind. I said, Mom is watching you. Mom does not want you to buy the frozen meatballs. So it sounded crazy to me. It sounded ridiculous to say meatballs to this woman. But it was meaningful to her because she knew, first of all, she knew Mom was alive. She's at another level of existence, but she's alive. She knew that Mom was listening in on the conversations, and that Mom was seeing what's happening. More importantly, Mom could see what's happening in her life, and it was really meaningful to her. So I don't question it. I just say it, meatballs, whatever it may be. Let me see. There was another fellow who came through. This was a grandfather who came through, and he showed me himself cheating at cards. I mean, he actually showed himself positioning the other person, who was his grandson. I mean, he cheated his grandson at cards, really, But, it wasn't for money or anything. He just, I guess, liked to win. He positioned his grandson in such a way that he could see the cards in the mirror. And this guy was something of a, sort of gentle rogue. I could smell the cigars, I could smell the whiskey, I could smell the aftershave. And he was completely unrepentant about it. He really enjoyed it. And again, when he sat down with him today, he was cheap with cards and have a good time doing it. And his granddaughter immediately started laughing, and she said, that's him. That's him. So they come through with their humor intact because they're still the people they were. I mean, we're learning, we're growing, we're evolving, but we're still the people we were. We don't turn into something else. We retain our personalities. And I even had a ghost play a trick on me. This happened, it sort of kind of led me on. This happened in what is today an art museum, a small art museum. It was once the mill owner's mansion. Today it's an art museum. And you can go through it with the rooms. And I went through this with a sort of paranormal group. And they really wanted to check me out and see if I was for real or what. That's what I really think was happening. Although ostensibly we're doing something else. So we're walking through the building, and I'm giving impressions. I feel this, I feel that. And there's a lot of sad stuff that happened. The place had a long history, a lot of deaths happened. And by the time we walked through the building, everybody was feeling a little bit bummed out because, there was some sad stuff that had happened there. So we went down into the basement. They suggested, hey, let's go down into the basement. So we went down into the basement. And the basement was like a rabbit warren. It had lots of little rooms that over the years we added, or passageways. It was very creepy. And so it was atmospheric. And there was one room where there was, I don't know what this was. It was like a voodoo doll or something. I don't know. I guess I think some kid, maybe some teenager had put it there. But it was very creepy. So at this point, we're all kind of beside me. We were walking through this basement. And I already experienced the deaths and the sadness and whatever at the main house, and now we're down here, like little passageways, and I suddenly felt the presence of a gentleman. And he was saying, follow me. All right, so I said, well, there's somebody here, this gentleman wants us to follow him. And the guy behind me, docent, says, yeah, let's go. And obviously he knew who the person was and the way he was reacting. So we are walking through this basement, and I'm feeling like it's leading me on. And of course my mind is kind of creeped out at this point. So now I'm imagining things. I'm imagining, oh my God, what are we going to see? What are we going to find? We come to the very end of the corridor. There's really nothing there except the doorway. And this is where he was led me. I feel like he used to hang out here and hide or something, hide here. So I'm feeling, now I'm creeped out. And the docent says, well, let me open the door and show you what's on the other side. And I'm thinking, oh, what's on the other side? Like a skeleton or something? No, he opened the door, and there were steps that led to the yard outside. And on the steps were about 20 bottles of whiskey. Dusty old bottles of whiskey. And this is where this guy used to come to drink. He used to hide there because the owner of the mansion was a teetotaler. He didn't believe in drinking. And he didn't approve of it. He wouldn't allow his employees, I guess, to drink on his property. So this guy used to come here and drink. And when they rehabilitated the place, they found his bearded whiskey bottles and decided to leave him there. So this guy had actually led me on. He picked up on my being sort of creeped out by the whole place and was enjoying it and was sort of having me on. So they can interact with us and they can have a sense of humor. It's not at all as melodramatic. Sometimes it's sad. Sometimes it's always serious to touch the other side. And it is sacred. But sometimes it's humorous. And I'd like to leave you with a little story that happened here in Ireland, in Dingle. I was here several years ago with my husband Michael, and my friend Nancy, my very dear friend Nancy, who has since passed us here. Her family from California. And we were in Dingle. We went into a pub, and as soon as we walked in, I could feel a gentleman over here by the bar. There was an empty stool there, and I said, there's somebody there. Now Nancy was petrified, ghosts. She was like, no, don't tell me about ghosts, I don't want to hear it. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but there's somebody there. Anyway, so we went up to the bar stool, and on the wall was a little plaque that said, this is where Charlie always sat. So I said, see? This is where Charlie's Charlie. She's like, don't tell me about Charlie, I don't want to hear about Charlie. All right, so we had a drink, and then she says, well, I'll get the next round. So she gets up, so if it was a drink, but she gets up and goes up to the bar, and she's standing right next to Charlie. So I said, Nancy, you're saying that next to Charlie. And she's like, don't tell me about Charlie. She says, there are no ghosts, don't even say it. She says, stop, don't even say that. And as she says that, this big, heavy glass beer mug jumps off of the bar and smashes at her feet. I got a million pieces, and bam. And she freaked out. And I said, that's Charlie. So after that, she was a believer. She still didn't hear about it. She still, I mean, how could she not believe it? It's her friend. But anyway, but she realized that there is such a thing as ghosts. So I just want to leave you with the thought that our loved ones don't leave us, and that their emotions are intact, their memories are intact, and ours are too when you pass to spirit. We don't lose anything. We don't lose anything. If anything, we get more intelligent. We have a larger vision. We're only better. So don't be afraid of your loved ones who have passed, because they are with you. They do see what's happening in your life. They still have their personalities. They still have their sense of humor. They still love you. And you can reach them. Thank you.
You all know the story of Alice Clicker. If you don't, back in the day, about 600 years ago, she was a very wealthy woman in Kilkenny, and because she was a woman of wealth and property, they decided, certain people, that she was a witch in order to get their hands on her property. Anyhow, she managed to escape, and anyhow, many years later, in other words, in the 20th century, an American painter came across the story when he was reading about witchcraft, and he was fascinated by the story of Alice Hitler, and he painted a portrait of what he thought she might well have looked like. Now, about 5 years later, somebody who did not know him, and he did not know her, they'd never heard of each other, they had no reason to, but an academic here in Ireland called Claire Nolan wrote a book about Alice Hitler. And, you know, like a lot of academic books, it kind of wasn't very widely known or anything. But anyhow, she went to New York, and quite by accident, she went to an exhibition of the American painter's work. And she came to one painting, and it blew her mind totally. The picture of Alice Hitler could have been her. And if you don't believe that story, all you have to do is go to Hitler's Inn in Kilkenny today, and if you go upstairs to the restaurant upstairs, you will see the painting, because he sent the painting to Hitler's Inn. He said, "It belongs to you people." And you will see the story written there. You will see a portrait of Claire Nolan herself, and you will see the picture that he painted 5 years before she wrote the book, and he hadn't a clue that she even existed, and she didn't know he existed. So there you are. There are things in heaven and earth, etc., etc. Now, we're going to take your questions, and I'll ask our speakers tonight, each one which, whichever feels that they are most competent to speak about. So just give us a second there while we rearrange the chairs, and we'll deal with your questions, okay? Can you please discuss and explain an Ouija board? I have read many stories and want to hear your opinion before going near one.
Like a gun, you can use it and you can cause damage and you can just enjoy and play with it. But you need to have respect for spirit. And if you're going to go to a Ouija board and ask questions, then you need to have respect and ask the spirits to come from a higher level. The modern mediumship comes from the original Ouija board. Fox sisters in the States heard tapping when they were in their home, and it turned out they would start communicating through tapping, which was the original Ouija board, and they got information from a man who had been a travelling salesman. He was very good seller. And eventually, I don't know why, there was lots of experiences there, but they denied it. So I've heard about people working with Ouija boards and something frightening happened and they left it be. But I've had experience with just 2 other people with the Ouija board, and it was intelligent. We wrote down what the spirit said, and we had respect for them, they had respect for us. But you don't need it really, you can just communicate the way we did today.
Dr. Margaret Humphreys brought up an interesting topic about the afterlife. It made me think, do each of the speakers feel that persons from a more religious background are more likely to see or believe in spirits? And do each of you come from this background?
What kind of a background?
From religious. Yeah. No.
I trust Spirit. And I know that Spirit will come through to us when we are ready, no matter where we are, who we are, what we're experiencing, or what our background is. If we're ready for that experience, we'll have it. And I trust that, I know that Spirit will bring through the right person in the right way at the right time to the right person. So whatever you're experiencing, even if you think it's frightening, I would ask, where is the blessing in this experience? Knowing that Spirit is bringing it to us and that Spirit is using that intelligence, has that intelligence, I would ask, what can I learn from this experience and why has this experience come to me? So I don't believe that anything is coming to any of us in a wrong way. There's no way that Spirit will allow that to happen.
You know, the one thing we have to be careful of is putting Spirit or God in a box and going, this is exactly what it is with this bone on top, this is what it is. I think it needs to be really open, and I feel like when Spirit comes through, regardless of religious background or anything like that, honestly, in my experience, not in my opinion, it's never had anything to do with anything. They come as the need. It doesn't, because people will come for readings and things like that, and they'll say, this is what I want. You might not get what you want, but you're going to get what you need. And it's hard for people to understand, because, well, I'm paying, or I'm doing this, and I'm doing that. But we can't say, no, I don't want that, go get me this. You know, so I just feel like it's a very similar thing. If the need is great enough, they will come. It may not be in the way that you want it, but they always are there. You just have to trust that it unfolds naturally the way it's supposed to.
I suppose what I really wanted to convey was my personal opinion and my sadness for people who are non-believers, because I think it is a great comfort going through life if you do believe that you're going on to a better place later. And I think there's a terrible void and a lack of happiness if you're too materialistic and if you lack that spiritual side. That was the main point I wanted to make. Thank you.
I just mentioned here about angelic sightings. There have been millions of stories now collected by people about people who've seen angels, and quite a lot of them have had no religious background whatsoever, not Jewish, not Catholic, not Protestant. Some of the angels were seen with wings, some without wings, but they all had the same story to tell, in that there was a loving presence that saved them or that guided them.
My own thought on the matter is, God isn't religious. Now, what is your take on the Ascended Masters?
This is just my personal opinion, is that I know a few people at home that do a certain type of thing. I won't say what it is, but it's a certain type of modality that works specifically with either Ascended Masters or angels. And the thing is, this is just my opinion, is that I believe that yes, there are higher evolved beings and there's all sorts of levels, but I think they're presented with what you're willing to accept. So in other words, if I can only hear from Jesus, then maybe that's the way that the Spirit needs to come through to me. You know, I don't believe that it's an individualized expression, it's a collective, if that makes sense. So because I have friends at home that have spent years getting certificates, and then it's like, you know, now I'm activated to work with so-and-so. And I just don't, this is my personal opinion again, I just don't believe that anyone can give you the certification to work with whomever. I believe that if you sit and you meditate and you're dedicated and you're true, it comes from your heart, the right beings will come to work with you regardless.
When I work one-to-one with people, the message from Spirit for everybody is always one of love, as I was saying earlier on. So just know that your Spirit friends are with all of you tonight, every single one of you, and they're all sending you love. Because, as Kathleen said there, it's quite cold here. And I'm sure you're all feeling it, and you're nodding around with my coat on there a couple of minutes ago. So that means that there's lots and lots of spirits here. They're mostly your spirits, and they've come through love. So, and you feel that love in your heart. So if you go into your heart, you should feel your heart nice and warm and open, and that's their love coming through to you.
Are there any ghosts here tonight?
there are ghosts here tonight. We feel as soon as we walk in, I'm sure all the meetings here could feel, everybody in the audience, probably everybody could feel as you walked in. The air gets heavy. If we start to be sensitive to air pressure, I think that's one way that you can start to perceive spirits. If you would like to start developing that, start to perceive not just coldness, not just temperature, but also the pressure. I find a heaviness in the air when spirits are present, and of course as soon as I cross the threshold, I can feel heaviness. So yeah, they're definitely here. There are spirits here. There are ghosts here. The room is also full of spirits because they can come with you and with us as well. If you pay attention, you won't need mediums to help connect you to your loved ones because they're already with you and they are trying to reach you.
And I suppose we might as well have the last word to that great man from Cork, William Shakespeare. I should almost kill him. But he did have a very good point, I think, when he put the words into somebody's mouth. He said, there is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. So the most important thing I think we might all learn from tonight is not to be prisoners in our own minds, but to open up the mind, open up the senses, open up the mind. With that in mind, thank you all very much. Would you like to stand up and take a connection from